Hey everyone. So it's kind of been a while since I've done an upload. I meant to get this one out sooner but didn't get around to it. I'm sorry about that. But this is going to be my video about scenecore. In other words, it's essentially like a subgenre of a music genre. Now, music evolves all the time, obviously, but in case you haven't noticed, a lot of scene kids are unhappy about scenecore, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay, so basically, scenecore, as of recent, has sort of sprouted off into more of its own thing, and people are starting to dress quote-unquote scenecore, right? Now, obviously there's nothing wrong with dressing alternatively, but the problem is the lyrics of a lot of scenecore songs and music really stereotype scene culture and make it seem as though it's a very watered down subculture as a whole. Naturally, scene kids are unhappy about that because they feel like it's contaminating might be a bit stronger word, but they feel like it's defacing their subculture and dragging them through the mud quite a bit, because quite frankly, it is. Furthermore, a lot of the leading figures in scenecore, such as Barely Human, brand themselves not making scenecore music, but rather as being seen themselves. An important thing to notice, or note rather, is despite what a lot of people tell you, scene is not a music-based subculture, right? Scene existed because people dressed with inspiration from emo because they wanted to attract them, they wanted to be in relationships with them, right? Over time it became its own thing, where the focus was guys would dress more effeminately and girls would dress in unpopular clothing, and the sort of moral of scene kids became being unpopular in a popular way, or being popular while staying true to yourself. Now, I have some friends, right, on the internet. You know who you are if you found my channel. You know who you are. I'm not going to name drop you, but they are quote unquote scene, but they only listen to music by scenecore artists. And I think this is a good example of, I've got their permission by the way to say this. I think this is a good example of how scenecore is mischaracterizing scene culture, because when I asked what scene was about, their words to me, not word for words, right, this isn't word for words, but paraphrasing, their words to me was about alcohol, drugs, and focuses such as self-harm. Obviously, this is far from the case. Like I said prior to this, scene is about being true to yourself, but being just popular around at the same time, right? It's the poser subculture of emo, like how emo is the poser subculture of goth, goth is the poser of punk, etc, etc. Now, some people are arguing that scenecore is just the next one along, like scenecore is the poser subculture of scene. But that's not the case, because there's already a poser subculture of scene, and that one is EKid, or 2020's alt, as some people call them. I will return God, my lips are dry. My lips are really dry. I will return to that in a minute, but 2020 alt isn't the focus right now. See, the reason why we see scenecore as a problem, rather than accepting it comes along, is because the people doing it mischaracterize themselves as scene, or mischaracterize scene people as scenecore, so much so that people of both subcultures, of scene and of scenecore, are starting to, the line is starting to blur for them. They're starting to be unable to differentiate between which side's which. And obviously, in alternative cultures, it's important to know the difference between subcultures, because if you didn't differentiate between subcultures, they'd all merge together. And the point of being alternative is finding communities that dress, listen to music, and have the perspectives similar to your own or the same as your own, right? To break away from the norm and find solace in the communities that agree with you personally rather than agree with the general norm. I can further this by saying you might a punk dresses the way they do because they have a belief of anarchism and anti-government, right? You wouldn't necessarily find that in somebody like a scene kid who, rather than having a belief of anti-government, might have a belief against popular norms. Same thing goes with goths, which is a left-based subculture, and emo, which is a subculture that focuses on seeing strength in vulnerability rather than weakness. So that's one of the problems that the communities have with scenecore in general. But there is another problem, which is less related to scene and more related to how scenecore has mischaracterised hyperpop. Hyperpop music is, for those of you who don't know, a loosely defined genre and a movement that started around 2015 and carried over, gaining popularity in the 2020s, which was essentially making fun of how generic popular music sounded by exaggerating the instruments and tools they would use, such as autotune. If you ever heard the song Sugar Crash by Eliotto or Stupid Horse by 100 Gex, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? Now, those bands belong to the subculture EKid, or 2020's EKid. Remember in the lockdowns when people were calling themselves things like Bug and Rat and etc, etc? Those are the E-kids, E-boys, E-girls. Now, the reason why I'm talking about them is because so many scenecore people have mischaracterised them as scene, right? Which we were already past that. They mischaracterised themselves as scene initially because that's how subcultures are created. But they've broken off and have accepted that they are their own subculture, right? Now, scenecore has come along and is noticing they also share similar aspects, less in things like the hair and the intentions of the subculture, and more just by judging from things, very shallow aspects like Monster Energy, which you saw me drinking there, candy bracelets, etc, etc. Things that they share with the scene culture. And because they're doing this, scene people, scene kids, scene kings and queens, are starting to mischaracterise E-kids as scenecore. In some areas of the world, parts of the UK, I would like to say, because I'm from the UK, alternative people are considered somewhat of a minority after the murder of Sophie Lancaster, a Morgoth who was attacked and murdered by a group of teenage boys just because she was different, right? So we have placement under things like hate crime to protect us from that, and scenecore as a thing, scenecore as a subculture, which it isn't. I'd like to get that perfectly clear. Scenecore is not a subculture. Scenecore is a subgenre of hyperpop, right? And it's linked into E-kids, but it's important you make the differentiation between the two, because there's a difference between imitating something and being something because you feel true to it. They are, like I said about alternative people being, under hate crime watches in places of the world and all that, scenecore people generally do not understand that. Do they understand the damage they are doing by hopping between the lines of alternative subcultures? Anyway, that's why a lot of alternative people, such as scene kids, emos, and some, I'm not speaking on behalf of E-kids because I'm not and haven't been one. I would have been if I wasn't a fucking Reddit neckbeard at the time when the movement was happening, but I'm not one, so I don't want to speak on behalf of them, mischaracterise them, but to my understanding, acceptance is a very big part of their culture, so it's a lot less of them that disagree with scenecore, but I have still seen ones that do, or don't, sorry, agree with scenecore. That's why we get so sort of snide and stick our nose up, or stick our noses up at them, because we believe that they are doing more damage than they are moving the subculture forward. Anyway, yeah, that was it. First video in a while. Bit of a negative one, but that's okay. That's it. Subscribe, guys.